And the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, If any man worship the beast and his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb.
Está viviendo en la Tierra un cambio climático.
Came to visit Pope Francis, he said that he believed when it came to the climate crisis.
Now we are standing alongside millions of people across the world who feel.
Chapter 4, showing the massive crowd marching from Foley Square to the court.
The Pope called for coronavirus vaccines to be made available and accessible to all.
COVID-19 has shown a bright light on our own society's face.
Let's go to the beginning. Before discovering what the mark of the beast is, we need further context into the story of humanity in order to fully comprehend why this is an important issue to God. To do this, we need to understand the government of heaven. Jesus has given us an insight into the order of heaven at the highest levels in the Bible. Notice what he says to Moses in Exodus 25 verse 8, "And let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them." The sanctuary was a portable temple that God gave to the children of Israel to teach them how the plan of salvation for humanity would play out. Some of these items have their true counterparts in heaven. In Hebrews chapter 8 we learn, "Now of the things which we have spoken, this is the sum. We have such an high priest who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle, which the Lord pitched and not man." In fact, in verse 5 of that same chapter, it mentions that the instruments of the tabernacle are a shadow of heavenly things. The overall plan of the sanctuary is as follows. We have the curtain enclosure, which was 100 cubits by 50 cubits. We have the altar of burnt offerings where animals would be sacrificed, the brazen laver, and the tabernacle. The tabernacle was split into two compartments. We have the holy place, and in it the table of showbread, the lampstand, and the altar of incense. Then we have the most holy place where the mercy seat was located, otherwise known as the throne of God. It is this item that we will use to understand the controversy between Jesus and Satan. How do we know that the mercy seat is indeed the throne of God? In Hebrews 4 verse 16 we learn, "Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace that we may obtain mercy." Notice the two beings on either end of the seat. What are they? In Exodus 25 verse 18 we learn, "And thou shalt make 2 cherubims of gold, of beaten work shalt thou make them in the 2 ends of the mercy seat." Cherubims in the Bible are angels. However, these 2 angels are special angels. Notice what they do over God's throne. In verse 20 it says, "And the cherubim shall stretch forth their wings on high, covering the mercy seat with their wings. Their faces shall look toward one another. Toward the mercy seat shall the faces of the cherubims be." So these cherubs cover the throne of God with their wings. In heaven we can confirm that there are cherubims of glory shadowing the mercy seat, of which we cannot now speak particularly. So right now we don't know who those 2 angels are. The office of a covering cherub is the highest position an angel can hold in heaven. Remember this information. You'll need this for later. Now the ark is what goes under the mercy seat. Is the real ark in heaven? John has a vision in Revelation, and in chapter 11 verse 19 we read, "And the temple of God was opened, and there was seen in his temple the ark of his testament." So now that we know that the real ark is in heaven, what goes inside the ark? Exodus 25 verse 21, "And thou shalt put the mercy seat above upon the ark, and in the ark thou shalt put the testimony that I shall give thee." What is this testimony? In Exodus 31 verse 18, "And he gave unto Moses, when he had made an end of communion with him, upon Mount Sinai 2 tables of testimony, tables of stone written with the finger of God." So the real 10 commandments are written on tables of stone under the throne of God in heaven. In fact, Jesus will have the 10 commandments in his hand when he returns to earth. For it is written that he shall come with 10,000s of his saints, and from his right hand went a fiery law. In Ezekiel chapter 28, God is speaking to someone who will be destroyed. He calls him the king of Tyrus. "Son of man, take up a lamentation upon the king of Tyrus, and say unto him, Thus saith the Lord God, Thou sealest up the sum full of wisdom and perfect in beauty. Is God speaking to the real king of Tyrus at that time? No, because God says, Thou hast been in Eden, the garden of God. We know 4 people who have been in that garden: God, Adam, Eve, and Satan. He goes on to say, Every precious stone was thy covering: the sardius, topaz, and the diamond, the beryl, the onyx, and the jasper, the sapphire, the emerald, and the carbuncle, and gold. The workmanship of thy tabrets and of thy pipes was prepared in thee in the day thou wast created. From this we know it wasn't Adam or Eve, because humans do not have instruments created in them, nor do they have jewels created on them. What does God say next? Thou art the anointed cherub that covereth, and I have set thee so. Thou wast upon the holy mountain of God. Thou hast walked up and down in the midst of the stones of fire.
Thou wast perfect in thy ways from the day that thou wast created, till iniquity was found in thee. By the multitude of thy merchandise they have filled the midst of thee with violence, and thou hast sinned. Therefore I will cast thee as profane out of the mountain of God, and I will destroy thee, O covering cherub, from the midst of the stones of fire. Thine heart was lifted up because of thy beauty. Thou hast corrupted thy wisdom by reason of thy brightness. I will cast thee to the ground. I will lay thee before kings, that they may behold thee. Thou hast defiled thy sanctuaries by the multitude of thine iniquities, by the iniquity of thy traffic. Therefore will I bring forth a fire from the midst of thee, it shall devour thee, and I will bring thee to ashes upon the earth, in the sight of all them that behold thee.
When God created Satan, he was appointed as one of his covering cherubs. He was perfect but became tainted. Sin in the Bible is defined as transgression of the law. Jesus mentions 2 of the 10 commandments that Satan broke. John 8:44, Ye of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father ye will do. He was a murderer from the beginning, and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. As the Bible makes it clear, the wages of sin is death, hence Satan was due the death penalty. Satan, before being banished from heaven, managed to convince 1/3 of the angels to take his side. After all, he held the highest position an angel could hold in heaven, hence why he was so successful in doing so. But he was not allowed to stay in heaven as he tried to reform the government of God. His plan was to add himself as a god and challenge the position of Jesus himself. Jesus says,
How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet thou shalt be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit.
Seeking to take revenge against God, Satan would target what he loves most, his creation. For since the beginning of the world, men have not heard, nor perceived by the ear, neither hath the eye seen, O God, beside thee, what he hath prepared for them that waiteth for him. There was a special plan for humanity, and that was to make man equal unto the angels of heaven. As Jesus says, For in the resurrection they neither marry nor are given in marriage, but are as the angels of God in heaven. But before humanity could take that position, like the rest of the angels in heaven, they were to be tested, whether they would break God's law, like Satan, or whether they would reject Satan's ideas and choose God. Spiteful and angry, Satan would seek to put humanity on his side by causing them to break God's law. He was successful at making our first parents break commandment number 1, and over the course of time he has adapted his plans, but uses the same tactic over and over again. The same way God's government has laws and a hierarchy, so does humanity, and Satan causes rulers of nations to create laws which would force the people to break the law of God. He gets them to come up with an idea that looks good in their eyes. However, this causes their subjects to disobey God. There is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. During the height of the Babylonian Empire, the king at the time was called King Nebuchadnezzar. The Bible records him having a dream in which he sees an image composed of 4 metals, each metal representing a kingdom. The one who gives him the interpretation of the dream is a young man called Daniel, as the dream was a prophecy that his kingdom would fall. Troubled by the dream, wishing for his kingdom not to end, he sees the interpretation as a threat to his reign. So what bright idea does Satan give him? He establishes a state religion and sets up a golden statue, forcing everyone to bow down to the statue. What's the reason for this forced worship? Well, It's unlikely your kingdom will fall if your kingdom has one mind. However, 3 Hebrew boys didn't bow. Why? Because it would have broken commandment number 2. Can you see how Satan works? What looks like a great solution at the height of politics can lead to the detriment of God's people. In the end, the 3 Hebrew boys were saved from the fire they were cast into. But Satan's playbook didn't change. Daniel in his later years became president for King Darius. Daniel was preferred above the presidents and princes. So Satan stirred up jealousy in the heart of his political opponents. Then said these men, "We shall not find any occasion against this Daniel, except we find it against him concerning the law of his God." So the men sought to trick the king into signing a new law which would make it impossible for anyone to worship any other god but the king for 30 days. Because they knew Daniel prayed to his God 3 times a day. Daniel continued to only worship his God and not the king, as this would have broken commandment number 1. This is what led to Daniel being thrown into the lion's den. However, once again, God protected his faithful. "My God hath sent his angel and has shut the lions' mouths, that they have not hurt me." We find one more example of Satan using the state to create unjust laws in the time of Esther. A law was set forth to destroy all the Jews of the land, pushed by one of Ahasuerus' princes, Haman. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. Satan moved Haman to be angry because Mordecai would not break commandment number 1 and bow to a man and give him worship. And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then Haman was full of wrath. The law that Haman helped to create was one to exterminate the Jews, because he made them seem as lawbreakers in the eyes of the king. He did this as revenge against Mordecai. And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, "There is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people, neither keep they the king's laws. Therefore it is not for the king's profit to suffer them." In the end, God protected his people once again, and Haman was hung on the gallows when his true motives came to light. In fact, this led to the Jewish holidays known as Purim. In summary, we see Satan's playbook that he uses time and time again. Create a problem which causes a reaction from a statesman or leader in politics, in which the solution he creates is actually against the law of God. However, in the ruler's short-sighted eyes, it looks like a good idea, and so shall it be for the mark of the beast. Why are God's 10 commandments so important? Well, it's because the 10 commandments summed up is the law of love. "He that hath my commandments and keepeth them, he it is that loveth me. And he that loveth me shall be loved of my Father, and I will love him and will manifest myself to him." The first 4 summarize your relationship to God, whilst the next 6 are about your relationship to your fellow human being. Can you say you love God and worship other gods? Can you say you love God and bow down to idols? Can you say you love God and take his name in vain? Can you say you love your neighbor and hate your own parents? Can you say you love your neighbor and murder them? Can you say you love your neighbor and commit adultery, steal, lie, or covet their stuff? For all of these questions, the answer is a resounding no. But can you say you love God and forget the Sabbath day?
Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy.
Satan's plan is to counteract one of God's commandments by state power. And remember how prophecy number 11 from Indictment on the Vatican part 1 is that the Vatican shall seek to change times and laws? Well, if Satan attacked commandment number 1 and 2 in the past, in these last days, what would be the greatest mockery to God? To set up his own version of the Sabbath on the day of his choosing. What does the term mark of the beast mean? Knowing this first, that no prophecy of the scripture is of any private interpretation, 2 Peter 1 verse 20. Hence, I can't say the mark is a chip. That's private interpretation. I can't say the mark is a vaccine. That's private interpretation. I can say the beast is the Vatican, as they are the only power which aligns with the prophecies in Revelation and Daniel after you define the symbols. So, what does it mean to be marked according to the Bible? Job 10:14. "If I sin, then thou markest me, and thou wilt not acquit me from mine iniquity." Psalm 133. "If thou, Lord, should mark iniquities, O Lord, who shall stand?" Jeremiah 2:22. "For though thou wash thee with nitre, and take thee much soap, yet thine iniquity is marked before me, saith the Lord God." Remember how Cain killed his brother Abel? That broke commandment number 6, "Thou shalt not murder." What did God do after that? And the Lord set a mark upon Cain, lest any finding him should kill him. Furthermore, we see that the Lord marks you for your good actions too. Psalm 37 verse 37. Mark the perfect man, and behold the upright, for the end of that man is peace. As we know the mark of the beast takes you to hellfire, you are therefore marked for sinning. The mark of the beast defined really means the sin of the Vatican. What's the definition of sin? Sin is the transgression of the law. The mark of the beast can be received in the hand or in the forehead, as we learn in Revelation chapter 14. How do you accept the sin of the Vatican in your hand or in your forehead? Your hand spiritually represents your might or ability. Deuteronomy 8:17, my power and the might of mine hand hath gotten me this wealth. Whilst your forehead represents your free will or your mind. Jeremiah chapter 3 verse 3, therefore the showers have been withholden, and there hath been no latter rain, and thou hadst a hoarse forehead. In fact, Deuteronomy chapter 6 adds the two definitions together. And these words, which I command thee this day, shall be in thine heart, and thou shalt bind them for a sign upon thine hand, and they shall be as frontlets between thine eyes. So Revelation 14 defined just means, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast, the Vatican, and his image, and receive his mark, his sin, in his forehead by free will, or in his hand by force, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God. So, the conclusion is, if you accept the sin of the Vatican by free will or force, you are marked as Satan's. So what commandment of God is the Vatican attacking? What do they say is their mark? Sunday is our mark of authority. The church is above the Bible, and this transference of Sabbath observance is proof of that fact. Of course, the Catholic Church claims that the change Saturday Sabbath to Sunday was her act, and the act is a mark of her ecclesiastical authority in religious things. Sunday is founded not of scripture but on tradition, as there is no scripture for the transfer of the day of rest from the last to the first day of the week. Protestants ought to keep their Sabbath on Saturday and thus leave Catholics in full possession of Sunday. Pope John Paul II stated that Christians will naturally strive to ensure that civil legislation respects their duty to keep Sunday holy. In the Catechism of the Catholic Church we read, in respecting religious liberty and the common good of all, Christians should seek to have the recognition of Sundays and the Church's holy days as legal holidays. Has there been a political push for Sunday as a day of rest?
Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it.
On the European Day for a Work-Free Sunday, the FAFCE recalls the need for a weekly common day of rest, crucial for the social cohesion of our communities and the intergenerational bond within families. The FAFCE is therefore happy to join the statement of the European Sunday Alliance, a network of more than 100 national Sunday alliances, trade unions, employers' organizations, civil society organizations, churches, and religious communities committed to raise awareness of the unique value of synchronized free time for our European society. As we see, there seems to be an obsession for Sunday to be made a day of rest. But a global Sunday law in which everyone is forced to keep seems a bit hard to implement, right? Why would an atheist, Buddhist, Muslim, or even some Christians accept a Sunday law? How will the Vatican implement this globally so that everyone will accept it? Remember what I said earlier. Satan forces a problem and gets leaders to come up with a solution which will counteract the law of God. In searching for a common enemy against whom we can unite, we came up with the idea that pollution, the threat of global warming, water shortages, famine and the like would fit the bill. All these dangers are caused by human intervention in natural processes, and it is only through changed attitudes and behavior that they can be overcome. The real enemy then is humanity itself. What's the theory of climate change? As the heat emitted from the sun hits the earth, some of that heat is re-radiated from the earth's surface into the atmosphere. The CO2 in the atmosphere absorbs the heat and radiates it back to the surface, while some heat escapes. The idea is that as more CO2 is released into the atmosphere, the greenhouse gas effect leads to an unstable climate around the world, causing disasters. So the problem in theory is CO2 emissions. The more CO2 emissions, the more disasters. We have our problem. Introducing Laudato Si. Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si is a worldwide wake-up call to help humanity understand the destruction that man is rendering to the environment and his fellow man. What's one of the solutions that Pope Francis puts forward for helping the climate? On Sunday, our participation in the Eucharist has special importance. Sunday, like the Jewish Sabbath, is meant to be a day which heals our relationship with God, with ourselves, with others, and with the world. Sunday is the day of the resurrection, the first day of the new creation, whose first fruits are the Lord's risen humanity, the pledge of final transfiguration of all created reality. It also proclaims man's eternal rest in God. In this way, Christian spirituality incorporates the value of relaxation and festivity. We tend to demean contemplative rest as something unproductive and unnecessary, but this is to do away with the very thing which is most important about work, its meaning. In other words, the problem is climate change. We need to reduce emissions. Let's rest one day a week with no economic activity. There is a way that seemeth right unto a man, but the end thereof are the ways of death. Since the release of Pope Francis's encyclical, the Vatican has taken center stage on the issue of climate change. She is also positioning herself as the moral authority in the world.
Eric Schmidt, CEO of Google. Donald Trump, President of the United States. Vladimir Putin, President of Russia. Leonardo DiCaprio, Hollywood movie star. Christine Lagarde, Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund. Elizabeth II, Queen of England. Why do authorities from around the world want to meet with Pope Francis? Why do Obama and Raul Castro credit Pope Francis's contribution to the reopening of their positive relationship? How is leadership generated? What are the keys to strengthen prestige?
As climate change is seen as an existential threat to the planet, she now has a problem which can bring together all of humanity from different creeds, cultures, and races.
Pope Francis has released his encyclical calling all people to be good stewards of the earth as a call to action in the lead up to the UN Climate Summit in Paris in December.
The very fact that arguably the most important religious figure is addressing this issue highlights how enormously significant and important it is for all of humanity.
I believe that as all of our interreligious leaders come together, the world will respond accordingly.
With the encyclical, Pope Francis has issued an urgent call to take action to protect the planet. The time to act is now.
Working with the heads of state, she also has the political capital to now execute this long-awaited plan and initiate what she now calls her new normal.
John Kerry, the U.S. Special Envoy for Climate, met with Pope Francis and Vatican officials Saturday morning. EWTN News Rome correspondent Colin Flynn has more on that visit.
John Kerry has been meeting with government officials and business leaders ahead of the United Nations Climate Change Conference due to take place in Glasgow later this year. The former US Secretary of State spoke to Vatican media after his meeting with the Pope, and when asked why he came to visit Pope Francis, he said that he believed when it came to the climate crisis, Pope Francis is one of the great voices on the subject. He also talked about Pope Francis's encyclical Laudato Si, saying that it was, quote, a very, very powerful document, eloquent and morally very persuasive.
As the Pope is ready to implement this Sunday law worldwide, there's a question we need to ask ourselves. Is the world ready for a climate change solution? Are they crying out for one?
My message to all the politicians around the world is the same.
Climate action! Now!
Listen to the science and act on the science.
So, at least 500,000 here today.
Also down there, activist Greta Thunberg, who recently sailed to Manhattan to drive home her point.
And this is so much bigger than just the New York protests. Take a look, part of a global call for action. There have been similar rallies happening all day long, all around the world, from New Jersey to Boston to even overseas in Paris. News 4's
Today's global interdependence obliges us to think in terms of one world with a common plan, and he called on finance ministers to work to achieve the goals agreed on by governments in the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals and the Paris Climate Agreement COP21. As nations lock down in fear of coronavirus, the Pope now has the scientific pretense he needs to garner global support.
The lowest point that Pope Francis hit was in the actual Laudato Si. They actually said, we must pray for the successful outcome of a UN climate treaty. I mean, he turned into a United Nations lobbyist asking faithful Catholic to pray for the successful outcome. Well, I didn't follow the Pope on that. And again, the Pope has an unholy alliance. It had a big impact. It made the environmental left giddy because they descended upon the Vatican multiple times. We had people like Naomi Klein, author of Capitalism versus the Climate. Capitalism is incompatible with a livable climate. Guess what? She's now going to papal conferences and presenting to the Vatican and the Pope and the Pontifical Academy of Sciences.
At least one societal change resulting from the quarantine could do wonders to reinvigorate our national sense of family, faith, and community. Let's give serious thought to reinstating at least some of the time-honored Sunday closure laws, sort of a 1 day per week modified stay-at-home request. Such action would rededicate our society to a regular day of rest, family meals, civic associations, and religious observance.
To the earth to improve, and now we sacrifice our modern way, our carbon in order to improve the climate. I mean, he gets that whole religion climate thing, but he was silenced. But I think Pope Francis has had a huge impact because it's another tool with which media, academia, and activists can beat anyone over the head. Even the Catholic Pope, is saying this. It's so overwhelming. The idea is just to get every sector of society, and they own it now, and have no pushback, and they own that. I mean, other than blogs, retired scientists, there's no official pushback. The Trump administration is not pushing back. That's the most devastating thing that's happened here in this whole thing. No one is pushing back on the science. And it tells people across the world in America that maybe there's something to this science. Maybe they're all right. Maybe the UN and Al Gore are right.
You're on a very important mission here to Europe. Can you tell us, why is it important to include a visit with the Pope during your visit to Europe to talk about climate change?
Well, the Pope is one of the great voices of reason and compelling moral authority on the subject of the climate crisis. He's been ahead of the curve. He's been a leader. His encyclical Laudato Si is really a very, very powerful document, eloquent and morally very persuasive. And I think that his voice will be a very important voice leading up to and through the Glasgow conference, which I believe he intends to, hopefully intends to attend. So we need everybody in this fight. We need all the leaders of the world need to come together, and every country needs to do its part. And I think His Holiness speaks with a moral authority that is quite separate. It's unique, and we need all the power we can bring to the table.
The Vatican has set forth a 7-year project to create dialogue between different groups from schools to businesses in order to inspire a worldwide transformation where the principles of Laudato Si will be implemented globally. Unfortunately, one of those principles is that Sunday law. On the Vatican's Human Development website, we find that we intend to begin in early 2021. by inviting a certain number of the above institutions to begin their 7-year journey of integral ecology in the spirit of Laudato Si. The following year, we will encourage a new group, hopefully double the number of the previous group, to begin their 7-year journey and so on. In this way, we are planning to grow a Laudato Si inspired network that continues to expand and grow exponentially each year. This will continue for each of the coming years of the new decade. In this way, we hope to arrive at a critical mass needed for radical societal transformation invoked by Pope Francis in Laudato Si. Whilst in the past the Vatican used religion to control politics, today she uses science.
The pandemic has led to a global shutdown. Air travel has dramatically reduced. Factories have closed. And roads and motorways are empty. In one of the most profound changes to human society in living memory,
You haven't been paying close attention. A report released yesterday by the International Energy Agency gave us a sneak preview of what might be coming. And of course, the lockdowns gave them the perfect roadmap for how to exert control over the population. Don't take my word for it, they admit this. The COVID crisis demonstrated that people can make behavioral changes at significant speed and scale if they understand the changes to be justified. Now, will we be ordered to stay at home because of the climate? Well, perhaps not. The left is rarely that straightforward.
In his address entitled World Day of Prayer for the Care of Creation, Pope Francis says, "In his wisdom, God set aside the Sabbath so that the land and its inhabitants could rest and be renewed. These days, however, our way of life is pushing the planet beyond its limits. Our constant demand for growth and an endless cycle of production and consumption are exhausting the natural world. Forests are leached, topsoil erodes, fields fail, deserts advance, seas acidify, and storms intensify. Creation is groaning. In some ways, the current pandemic has led us to rediscover simpler and sustainable lifestyles. The crisis, in a sense, has given us a chance to develop new ways of living. Already we can see how the earth can recover if we allow it to rest."
Esta pandemia nos ha demostrado qué ocurre cuando el mundo se para, hace una pausa, aunque sea de unos pocos meses, y el impacto que esto tiene en la naturaleza y el cambio climático de una manera tristemente positiva, ¿no? Es decir, hace daño.
Pope Francis said both global catastrophes, COVID and climate change, show that we have no time to lose. He notes that time drives us, that we have the means to address the issue, and that we are at our limits.
La adversidad que estamos viviendo con la pandemia y que ya en el cambio climático la sentimos, nos va a impulsar, nos tiene que impulsar a la innovación, a la invención, a buscar caminos nuevos. De una crisis no se sale igual. Salimos mejores o peores. Este es el desafío.
When the Pope enforces this Sunday law by force, anyone found keeping it and ignoring the Sabbath day will go to the lake of fire. Humanity could not straight away go into a society where they ostracize their fellow man from buying and selling, and Satan knows this. They needed to be conditioned to accept this new normal. The Bible prophesies the Vatican's involvement in medicine. Revelation 18:23, "For by thy sorceries were all nations deceived." The word sorcery comes from the Greek word pharmakia. It means the use or administering of drugs. It's where we get the word pharmacy. In other words, the Vatican would deceive all nations using medicine as a pretense. The Vatican's Pontifical Council for Culture, STEM for Life, a Cura Foundation, and the Vatican Science and Faith Foundation host international conferences to bring together the world's thought leaders across all disciplines to engage in powerful conversations about health, humanity, and the future of medicine.
The Vatican has opened an international conference to discuss the role of the mind, body, and soul in the future of healthcare. The 3-day virtual event explores methods of prevention and preparedness against health crises. It features conversations from leaders in the humanities and scientific communities, such as Dr. Anthony Fauci, the chief medical advisor to U.S. President Joe Biden. Participants will discuss the ethics and implementation of cutting-edge advances in medical technology. Albert Bourla is the CEO of Pfizer, the first company to produce an effective vaccine against COVID-19. He says the rapid development of mRNA technology will lead to further breakthroughs in the medical field. He will close the conference with a message for all of the participants.
Sarebbe triste se nel vaccino per il Covid-19 si desse la priorità ai più ricchi. Sarebbe triste se questo vaccino diventasse proprietà di tale o quale nazione, non sia universale e per tutti.
Other speakers include Chelsea Clinton, Cindy Crawford, and the lead guitarist of Aerosmith, Joe Perry. The first International Vatican Conference was held in 2011 under Benedict XVI.
Wall Street analysts are projecting Pfizer and Moderna will generate $32 billion in COVID-19 vaccine revenue. Through her connections, she has and will continue to have a large influence on the pharmaceutical industry, where the industry stands to make billions through her power. And for rejecting her medicine, humanity are getting a preview of what sort of life they can expect to live should they reject her Sunday law.
The Prime Minister of Greece has said that he would welcome people to come on holiday in Greece, but they will have to have some kind of vaccine passport to show they've been vaccinated first. Is that something that the British government is looking at, the idea of a vaccine passport specifically to allow people to come and go in the months ahead?
No, we're not. And there are several reasons why we're not doing that. One, vaccines are not mandated in this country, as Boris Johnson's quite rightly reminded Parliament. That's not how we do things in the UK. We do them by consent.
At the end of September, everyone aged 18 and over will have the chance to receive full vaccination and the additional 2 weeks for that protection to really take hold. So at that point, we plan to make full vaccination a condition of entry to nightclubs and other venues where large crowds gather.
Part of it is not just that they see you on television and trust you. The people who seem to have the most impact are that for that 17-year-old kid, the kid he or she plays ball with. You got the vaccination? Yeah. Are you okay? I mean, you seem no, it works. Or or the mom and dad, or the neighbor, or when you go to church, or when you're I really mean it. There are trusted interlocutors. Think of the people, if your kid wanted to find out whether or not there's a man on the moon or whatever,
Who have planned this. It's all planned. Now, why they planned this, I don't know. And I don't even think I want to know.
This system is being put in place using lies, and it's being put in place using lies for some purpose, and I believe that purpose is complete totalitarian control.
It's the greatest experiment that has ever been performed in the history of medicine, and it's being performed on human beings. It's just an incredible thought.
Vacunarse con vacunas autorizadas por las autoridades competentes es un acto de amor, y ayudar a que la mayoría de la gente lo haga es un acto de amor. Amor a uno mismo, amor a los familiares y amigos, amor a todos los pueblos. El amor es también social y político. Hay amor social y amor político. Es universal, siempre desbordante de pequeños gestos de caridad personal capaces de transformar y mejorar las sociedades.
As she continues to push for a one-world government, which prophecy states she will get, she will continue to use health and the environment as political bargaining chips. We can heal injustice by building a new world order based on solidarity, studying innovative methods to eradicate bullying, poverty, and corruption, all working together, each for their own part without delegating and passing the buck. Also by working to provide healthcare for all, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark. The world is also moving away from physical money and towards a cashless society. And with this modern monetary system, it will make it that much easier to coerce the centers into accepting this new normal. Prophecy does say in Revelation 18 verse 3, the merchants of the earth are waxed rich through the abundance of her delicacies, for thy merchants were the great men of the earth. So we know that the richest and greatest men of the earth will be in bed with the Vatican.
È necessario urgente un sistema economico giusto, affidabile e in grado di rispondere alle sfide più radicali che l'umanità e il pianeta si trovano ad affrontare.
We are answering Pope Francis's challenge to create more inclusive economies that spread the benefits of capitalism more equitably and allow individuals to realize their full potential.
We invite all businesses, large and small, and individuals to join us as stewards for inclusive capitalism by going to our website, agreeing the principles, and making your own commitments to inclusive capitalism. Please join us. Thank you.
Through her ties to the CEOs of the world, she has the backing needed to force those not willing to comply with her new normal to be shut out from commerce. Now the question is, am I really going to hell for not working on Sunday? It's a bit more complicated. The issue is the seal of God versus the mark of the beast. In other words, Satan wants humanity breaking the Sabbath and at the same time keeping his Sunday Sabbath. If someone keeps the commandments of God, including the Sabbath, they attain the seal of God, and God marks them as his own. In order to attain that seal, that person cannot be breaking any of the commandments. How do we know you're sealed when you keep the law? Isaiah 8:16, bind up the testimony and seal the law among my disciples. As it says in 2 Timothy, those who are sealed depart from sin, as to sin means to break the law. 2 Timothy 2:19, nevertheless, the foundation of God standeth sure. Having this seal, the Lord knoweth them that are his, and let everyone that nameth the name of Christ depart from iniquity. An official seal requires three things: the name, title, and territory of the official. Without those three things, the seal is incomplete. When a law passes the House of Commons in the UK, it then passes the House of Lords and achieves royal assent, where it gets the seal of the Queen of England. Her seal would read, Elizabeth II, by the grace of God, and of the Britons and her other realms, Queen, head of the Commonwealth of Nations, defender of the faith. In the 10 Commandments, God places his seal on the Sabbath. In that commandment, we find the three characteristics of an official seal. His name, the Lord. I am the Lord, that is my name, Isaiah 42 verse 8. His title, Creator, because it says he made heaven and earth. And his territory, heaven and earth. Hence Jesus' seal reads, the Lord, creator of heaven and earth. And in Revelation chapter 14 verse 12, we learn of the group that doesn't accept the mark of the beast. Here is the patience of the saints. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. Satan doesn't mind if you have the faith of Jesus and disobey his commandments. He doesn't mind if you try to keep the commandments but don't believe in Jesus. He just doesn't want you doing them together. The mark of the beast isn't a new deception that Satan is introducing to humanity. It's the locking down of a deception that's taken him hundreds of years to plan out. So the Vatican will not only demand Sunday be kept holy, but they will demand that the Sabbath be desecrated and Sabbath keepers be labelled as heretics. Thus, people will be coerced into giving up the Sabbath, leading the whole world into the conditions set out in the Council of Laodicea. Christians shall not Judaize and be idle on Saturday, but shall work on that day. But the Lord's day they shall especially honour, which they call Sunday. And, as being Christians, shall, if possible, do no work on that day, If, however, they are found Judaizing, they shall be shut out from Christ. So, how will the Vatican be able to get the whole world to hate Sabbath keepers? Well, 1, they aren't going to call them Sabbath keepers, and 2, they get a little help. In part 1, we learned that after the deadly wound was to be healed, all the world was to wander after the beast. However, before the Vatican can implement their spurious Sabbath, Revelation says something very important must happen first. And they worshipped the dragon, which gave power unto the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast, and who is able to make war with him? Who is the dragon in prophecy? And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan. So this prophecy is telling us that the whole world will obey Satan? Will the world turn into open Satanists? Not quite. But first, can we confirm with another verse that this must take place before Jesus returns? 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 8-9. And then shall that wicked be revealed, whom the Lord shall consume with the spirit of his mouth, and shall destroy with the brightness of his coming, even him whose coming is after the working of Satan with all power, signs, and lying wonders. We learn from 2 Thessalonians that Satan must come working miracles before the second coming of Christ. He will then give strength to the Vatican according to Revelation 13 verse 4. However, he won't appear as Satan. He will appear all over the earth pretending to be Jesus. Notice the phrase, lying wonders. Did Jesus warn us of this event? Jesus speaking, Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore if they shall say unto you, Behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. Behold, he is in the secret chambers, believe it not. For as the lightning cometh out of the east and shineth unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Satan is planning to appear as Jesus working miracles to garner the support of the world. He will himself impersonate Jesus. Then, as Revelation 13 verse 4 says, he will give authority to the Vatican so that they can enforce the Sunday Sabbath. However, the problem is Satan will blame those keeping the true Sabbath as the cause for the calamities, the storms, the floods, the fires, the earthquakes, as it will be obvious that no amount of human intervention can stop the increasing calamities as the world is building up to the 7 last plagues.
Gerçekten çok zor.
While the world will be following who they think is Jesus, they will actually be following Satan, who will point to the Vatican as his true church on the earth. Unfortunately, although Jesus warned us that the calamities would increase as a sign of his return, the problem is, as the world listens to this false Messiah, they are deeper in disobedience, which removes them from the protection of God, allowing Satan to cause his own calamities. Does the Bible show us that Satan can also cause calamities? In the book of Job, Satan is permitted to try him. Everything is in Satan's control but his life, because God knew Job wouldn't falter through this trial. Notice the 3 things Satan caused. The servant said to Job, "The fire of God is fallen from heaven and hath burned up the sheep. Behold, there came a great wind from the wilderness and smote the 4 corners of the house, and it fell upon the young men, and they are dead." Job 2:7, so Satan went forth from the presence of the Lord, and smote Job with sore boils from the sole of his foot unto his crown. Satan caused fire, whirlwinds, and disease. As a former angel, he understands how to manipulate these elements. Hence, he can cause calamities on one hand and look like a savior on the other. The narrator asks the viewer, "Had I told you to wear a mask in 2015 before entering a shop, would I not have seemed a bit weird?" That's because if there's no problem, there requires no solution. However, now that it's 2021, you see why people are wearing masks. Hence, when the calamities get bad and no solution from humanity works, when a being shows up claiming to have the answers, humans fearful for their lives will listen to their every word. Now, if a virus, which people could not see but only feel its effects, can cause people to look at those who don't comply with the law as having blood on their hands, what do you think will happen if a majestic being shows up healing people and performing miracles? The world will be deceived. If that being then blames a certain group of people for all the problems, the world will comply, not because it makes sense anymore, but because the people fear what's happening around them. Miracles, signs, and lying wonders are more convincing than a virus. In the end, Jesus, foreseeing all of these events, gives a final warning to the world before he returns, to leave the Catholic Church and any church associated with her engaging in her traditions or ignoring his Sabbath. The call is this: repent and keep his Sabbath holy. Revelation 18 verse 4, and I heard another voice from heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, that ye be not partakers of her sins, and that ye receive not of her plagues. Due to the sins of the Catholic Church throughout history, God is repaying them for all the wickedness they have caused on the earth, in what's known as the 7 last plagues. For her sins have reached unto heaven, and God hath remembered her iniquities. Reward her even as she rewarded you, and double unto her according to her works, in the cup which she hath filled to her double. What are these plagues? The first plague is boils, for the diseases they have caused on the earth. The second plague is a bloody sea, even the blood of a dead man. The third plague is bloody rivers. The second and third plagues are for the bloodshed she has caused. The fourth plague is the heat of the sun being increased tremendously, for she has caused all the earth to engage in sun worship. The fifth plague is darkness across the whole earth, because she has taken away the light of the world and rejected the truth. The sixth plague is those who have accepted the mark of the beast are fully given into the hands of Satan to attack the remnant of Christians on the earth. And the seventh plague is 100-pound hailstones falling on those who've accepted the mark of the beast. All of these plagues will occur when Jesus finishes the judgment of the dead and the living, which is taking place right now in heaven, saying with a loud voice, Fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters. When the first plague begins, the seventh one will be done within a year's time. Remember how each day represents a year? Therefore shall her plagues come in one day, death, mourning, and famine. And she shall be utterly burned with fire, for strong is the Lord who judgeth her. To be joined to a church caught teaching the doctrines of the Vatican, God counts that church as a child of Rome, engaging in spiritual fornication. Whether it's Easter, Christmas, Valentine's, or any other pagan tradition, Rome has integrated into Christianity. The leaders of such churches at the second coming will say, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? And in thy name have cast out devils, and in thy name done many wonderful works? Then I will profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. These leaders are confused because they thought that they were following Jesus, whilst all along they were following the traditions and doctrines of Rome, because it was prophesied that at this time the whole world would be trapped in deception.
I just felt very honored and very humbled. Seeing the Pope give the Mass to 100,000 people that day, you just see, he has such a heart to help people. I love the fact that he's made the church more inclusive, not trying to make it smaller, but to try to make it larger, to take everybody in. So,
nevertheless, when the Son of Man cometh, shall he find faith on the earth? Revelation 12 verse 9, and the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. Why does Jesus say, I never knew you to these pastors and prophets? It's very simple. He that saith, I know him, and keepeth not his commandments, is a liar, and the truth is not in him. So as these Sabbath-breaking pastors see Jesus with the 10 Commandments in his hand, it is at this moment that they realize they are lost. In other words, if this sounds like your pastor, teacher, leave and repent before it's too late. In closing, did you notice Revelation 14 verse 9 says to not obey the beast and his image? In the third and final part of this series, we will learn that there is another power which will help the Vatican. For out of this nation, the same false system of religion mimics her, and we will find out which nation on the planet is her younger sister.